The argument started suddenly at a family dinner that was supposed to be simple. We were at our parents' old house to go over their will after they died 6 months ago. My brother Kyle handed out papers he called the updated version. "Everything goes to me," he announced, because I'd been running the business. I grabbed one and looked it over. The signatures didn't match what I remembered from the original. The dates were wrong. Sections about splitting things equally were gone. The tech company, the lake house, the millions in accounts, all under his name only, with me getting almost nothing. "This isn't real," I told him. "You made it up. Gotta prove it if you think so," Kyle replied. "Our parents always saw you as too unreliable for this stuff. I fixed it to keep everything safe." He showed no regret, just confidence. Everyone stayed quiet at first. Then Aunt Carol agreed that Kyle had been the steady one. Uncle Ted said they'd all discussed it and this was best. Cousins and in-laws added their support, looking away from me. These were people I'd shared family events with, helped out financially, celebrated with. Now they backed him as he took my share, probably because he promised them something. I realized they weren't on my side. They were after their own gains. I could have argued or demanded more. Instead, I folded the paper, stood up and smiled. "I'm done," I said. "You can keep what you call your inheritance." I picked up my coat and keys, walked out past everyone. As I left, Kyle laughed and commented that I was proving his point by leaving. My phone started getting messages right away. Relatives told me to come back, to talk it out, to keep the family together. I drove to a hotel and turned off my phone. For the first time since our parents passed, I felt clear. Leaving was the start. They didn't know I had the real will saved, along with other records. Things had felt off for months before that dinner. Kyle started taking more control of the family business after our parents got sick. He would schedule meetings without telling me, even though I had worked there part-time while pursuing my art. Phone calls came in late at night and he would step outside to take them, coming back with excuses about suppliers or clients. Bank statements showed unusual transfers, but when I asked, he said it was normal business stuff. Our cousins began acting distant, canceling plans with me but showing up at events Kyle organized. Aunt Carol, who used to call me weekly, stopped and started posting pictures online with Kyle at lunches I wasn't invited to. Uncle Ted borrowed money from the business accounts and repaid it through Kyle, bypassing the usual process. I noticed all this but told myself it was just stress from the loss. Now looking at how they sided with him at dinner, it made sense. They had been part of his plan for a while. At the hotel that night, I pulled out my laptop and reviewed the copies I had. The original will was from 5 years ago, notarized and clear about equal shares. I had scanned it after a family meeting back then, just in case. There were also emails from our parents discussing their wishes, emphasizing fairness. I decided to sleep on it and figure out next steps in the morning. Update: the comments on my post came in a lot, and I appreciate the support and ideas. A few people suggested contacting a lawyer right away, which I did the next day. I found one specializing in estate disputes through online reviews, and we met at a coffee shop near the hotel. She looked over my copies and said it looked like a strong case for forgery, but we needed proof. She recommended hiring a forensic document examiner and starting to gather any other evidence, like bank records or witness statements. Things moved fast after that, and it became a mess for Kyle. I stayed at a basic motel outside town to keep low while I planned. The owner, Ray, a former police officer, heard my story when I was checking in and gave advice on checking documents from his old cases. He even let me use his office printer to organize my files. After 2 days without my phone, I turned it back on and checked messages. There were 42 voicemails and over 60 texts. Kyle left several, insisting I stop accusing him of things and saying he would take legal action if I kept spreading what he called lies. Aunt Carol sent messages asking me not to cause problems for everyone, suggesting we sit down as a family to work it out. There was even a voicemail from a law office representing Kyle, warning that if I made public statements, they would pursue defamation charges. The family group chat online was active with Kyle's posts. He had uploaded scans of his version of the will and wrote long messages describing me as the sibling who couldn't accept reality, always causing drama. Uncle Ted replied telling him to stay firm and that the family was behind him. My cousins added comments saying I had always been jealous of Kyle's role in the business, and one even shared an old photo from a family trip where Kyle was in the center, implying he was the favorite. The situation spread beyond the family. It reached some of our parents' old business contacts, people who had invested in the tech company or worked as partners. One of them emailed me directly, saying he had heard from Kyle that I was making threats and trying to contest the will out of spite, and he advised me to be careful because it could affect the company's reputation. Another contact, an old friend of our dad's, called and left a message expressing confusion, saying Kyle had told him I was unstable and shouldn't be involved. I didn't respond to any of it publicly. Instead, I focused on building my case. I hired the expert my lawyer recommended and she examined both versions of the will. In her report, she pointed out the differences. The ink on Kyle's version was from a type not used until recently. There were digital edit marks visible under magnification, and metadata from the file showed it was created on Kyle's computer just 3 months ago. That was solid evidence. Whoa. While waiting for that report, I met the family accountant at a restaurant by chance. I was grabbing lunch, and he was there alone. He saw me and looked nervous, but he waved me over. He said Kyle had done this kind of thing before, like changing partnership papers a few years back, to push out a minor investor, and some relatives had helped cover it up by providing alibis or signing off on false reports. He decided to tell me, because our parents had specifically talked to him about wanting things fair between me and Kyle, and he felt guilty staying silent. That conversation gave me direction. I went home that evening and started checking public records online, property transfers, business filings, bank statements I could access through shared family accounts. I found money moved from the estate accounts to Kyle's personal ones before our parents' deaths, and emails between him and Uncle Ted, planning how to get family support for the new will. A bigger development came later that day. I got a call from someone I didn't know, who introduced herself as Kyle's former assistant. She said she had worked for him at the company for 2 years, and had recordings of conversations, where he talked openly about making changes to the will. She wanted to meet the next day at a public park, and she used the name Lena to sign off. I agreed, but I told my lawyer about it first, and she advised recording the meeting legally. This is getting larger than I expected. The family backing him in those group chats and messages shows their priorities. Each one of their supportive comments just makes the situation clearer to me, and probably to others watching from outside. I met Lena as planned. She was waiting on a bench with a folder and a USB drive. She explained that she had started recording meetings after noticing odd things, like Kyle asking her to backdate documents or shred certain files. She had quit a month ago when he fired her for questioning a transfer, but she kept copies. We talked for an hour, and she handed over the drive. I didn't listen to it there, but my lawyer reviewed it later that day and said it was gold. Clear audio of Kyle discussing the forgery with a relative on speakerphone. With all this, my lawyer filed an emergency motion to freeze the estate assets and request a court hearing. Kyle's side responded quickly, denying everything and accusing me of fabricating evidence. The hearing is set for next week, and I'm preparing for it. In the meantime, some anonymous posts started appearing on local forums, hinting at family drama in the tech company, which I suspect came from someone who overheard things. It's tense, but I feel like the momentum is shifting. Update 2. It took longer to post this because the last 8 days kept me busy with meetings, calls, and a lot of back and forth, but things have turned positive in a big way. The meeting with Lena changed a lot, giving me concrete proof that tied everything together. She provided not just one recording but several, all from Kyle's office over the past few months. In them, he explained the will changes step by step to different people, offered money to family members for their help in backing his story, and even mentioned setting up hidden accounts to avoid taxes and fees. One clip had him saying I was unaware of the business details, and that once I was pushed out, they could divide the rest among themselves without issues. Lena had her own reasons for coming forward. She had lost her job after questioning some of those transactions, and Kyle had badmouthed her to potential employers, making it hard for her to find work. We worked with a document expert to organize all the evidence into a timeline, and they uncovered Kyle's history going back further, altering records during college for better grades and loans, with family members like Uncle Ted providing false references to cover it up. There were even old court filings from a small dispute where Kyle had changed contract terms, though it was settled out of court. And Kyle reacted by taking me to court first, filing a claim for what he called emotional harm and interference with the estate. His filing accused me of harassment and trying to damage his reputation. My lawyer countered with our evidence, and the judge scheduled a combined hearing to address both sides. The session was in a full courtroom downtown, with reporters from local news outlets present because word had leaked about the family business dispute. I arrived early with my files and sat with my lawyer. Kyle came in with his attorney, and a group of family members filled the seats behind him. Aunt Carol made a comment loud enough for me to hear about how this would teach me a lesson for dragging everyone through it. I stayed calm and focused on the proceedings. My lawyer presented the recordings, the expert report on the forgery, and the financial records showing unauthorized transfers. The judge listened and asked questions. When the first recording played, the room went quiet. It was Kyle's voice clearly admitting to creating the new will to cut me out. His lawyer tried to dismiss it as out of context or tampered with, but the judge ordered an immediate verification. Family members started whispering among themselves, and a couple got up to leave quietly, not wanting to be associated. Uncle Ted stood up at one point and tried to interrupt, calling the whole thing a misunderstanding and saying I was blowing it out of proportion. The judge warned him to sit down or be removed. Kyle's expression changed as more evidence came out, especially when Lena took the stand as a witness. She explained her role, how she made the recordings, and what she had seen. Another recording played, this one capturing Kyle laughing about how easy it would be to convince the family I didn't deserve a share. By the end of the hearing, the judge threw out Kyle's claim against me and ordered a full review of the estate by an independent administrator. She also issued a temporary freeze on all assets and referred the forgery evidence to prosecutors for potential criminal charges. Kyle left the courtroom yelling at his lawyer, and I overheard him blaming the family for not supporting him enough. As I walked out, Lena caught up and said she felt better for speaking up, like a weight was off her shoulders. A reporter asked for a comment, but I declined and headed back to the motel. Ray, the motel owner, had seen the news starting to report on the hearing and congratulated me when I got back. He shared a story from his police days about a similar case where evidence like recordings turned everything around. My phone filled with messages now, but the tone shifted. Apologies from some family members saying they didn't know the full story and had been misled by Kyle. One cousin texted admitting he had been promised a job at the company in exchange for support. Even an old business contact of our parents reached out, offering to testify if needed about conversations where they expressed wanting equal treatment for both kids. Things are moving fast, and it feels like the truth is finally out there for everyone to see. The company board held an emergency meeting and suspended Kyle pending the review. Local news ran a segment that evening, and online comments started pouring in, with people debating family greed and inheritance fights. I stayed out of it, letting the facts speak. Final update. The court hearing set off a chain of events that kept unfolding over the next couple weeks. The independent administrator assigned to review the estate dove into all the records, and they found even more issues than we expected. Kyle had not only forged the will but had been moving money around for over a year, transferring funds from the company to personal accounts he controlled, some overseas. There were receipts for expensive trips and purchases that didn't match business expenses, and emails showing he had involved a few relatives in signing off on them to make it look legitimate. One of the recordings Lena provided got leaked somehow. It showed up on a popular local news forum first, then spread to social media platforms. Within hours, it had thousands of views, with people sharing clips and adding their own stories about family disputes. News sites picked it up, running articles with headlines about the scandal in our parents' tech company. The viral attention brought in tips from unexpected places. Former employees contacted my lawyer with their own accounts of Kyle pressuring them to alter reports or ignore discrepancies. One said he had been fired after refusing to backdate a contract, and he had kept emails as proof. Relatives who had supported Kyle at the dinner and in court started facing consequences. Aunt Carol's job at a local firm got complicated when her boss saw the news and asked about her involvement. She ended up taking leave to deal with family matters. Uncle Ted, who had borrowed from the estate, received notices from the administrator demanding repayment with interest. My cousins deleted their supportive posts from the family group and went silent online, but screenshots circulated anyway, leading to awkward questions from their friends and coworkers. A few lost business deals or social invitations because of the association. Kyle tried to fight back with a public statement posted on his social media. He claimed the recordings were edited and that I had orchestrated the whole thing out of resentment. He even held a small press conference outside the company building, with a couple loyal family members standing by him, repeating that it was all a misunderstanding. But that backfired when more people came forward. A distant relative, who hadn't been at the dinner, shared old messages where Kyle offered him money to stay quiet about earlier financial moves. Then the prosecutor's office announced they were investigating for fraud and forgery, based on the court's referral. The lawsuits piled up after that. The company board sued Kyle for breach of fiduciary duty, seeking to recover the misappropriated funds. Lena filed her own claim for wrongful termination, using the recordings as evidence. Even some investors in the tech firm got involved, demanding audits and threatening to pull out if the leadership wasn't cleaned up. Kyle's lawyer advised him to settle quietly, but he refused at first, leading to more public hearings where details kept coming out. Last week, Kyle showed up at the motel where I was staying. He looked tired and carried a folder full of papers. He said he had information that could damage everyone's reputation if I didn't back off and drop the challenges. It included old family secrets, like financial issues from years ago that our parents had kept private, and some personal details about relatives. Go ahead, I told him. Your actions have already shown what happens when things like this come out. He got angry, threw the folder on the ground and stormed off, yelling that I would regret it. Someone in the parking lot recorded the whole exchange on their phone, and that clip spread online too, adding to the viral storm. It got millions of views, with people commenting on how it looked like a meltdown from a TV show. The final court decision came yesterday, after all the reviews and investigations wrapped up. The judge ruled that the original will stands, with everything split fairly between me and Kyle as our parents intended. However, due to the fraud, Kyle's share got reduced to cover penalties, repayments, and legal fees. He faces criminal charges now, with a trial set for next month, and he's been barred from any role in the company. Word is he moved to another state to stay with distant friends and his social media accounts went private. As for the family, the fallout continued. Aunt Carol tried to reach out with a long email explaining her side, saying she thought Kyle was telling the truth and asking for forgiveness. I replied with copies of her messages from the group chat supporting him and then blocked her number. Uncle Ted sent a similar apology, admitting he had taken money from Kyle to keep quiet, but I ignored it and let the administrator handle the repayment demands. My cousins have been calling sporadically, some offering to help with the business now that Kyle's out, but I've kept my distance. The tech company is under new management, with a board that includes outside experts to prevent this kind of thing again, and I've taken my role in overseeing my share remotely while focusing on my art. I moved into a new apartment last month, closer to the city, and started a small gallery with part of my inheritance. It's been rewarding, connecting with artists and building something on my own terms. I even began seeing someone I met through a mutual friend, and we're taking things slow. Cutting out the toxic parts of the family has opened up space for better relationships and opportunities. Thanks for following the updates, everyone. Standing up with the facts, let everything play out as it should.